Hi, everybody. MJ Kinman here, and it's good to have you back. I have been waiting for this particular interview with this wonderful person in the gem industry for ever since I set it up. Um, this is a person who makes most beautiful jewelry, and this jewelry that's inspired by quilt designs. So I want to ask her all about it. Before we get into our conversation with Julie, I want to show you a little bit of a video to give you a sense of what her jewelry, what her designs look like. Her micro mosaic pendants and her mini mosaic pendants. She's going to talk a little bit more about that, but here's a little sneak peek into her technique, and you get to meet Julie Burkhart Haight.
Micromosaic jewelry is an old process that began in the late 1700s and gained popularity in the 1900s. It's a very tedious and time-consuming process that results in jewelry that has a rare and highly intricate beauty. Although it's become a dying art form, creating micro and mini mosaics has become a real passion for me. By adapting various methods and applying a contemporary twist, I've developed my own unique style and techniques. My designs are inspired by the dramatic colors, textures, and patterns I see in quilts, art, and nature. I'm Julie Burkhart Haight of Burkhart Design Studio, and I'd like to explain the process I use to create micro and mini mosaic jewelry. For both techniques, I start by hand fabricating a sterling silver bezel. This is the frame that holds the pieces of glass to form the design. The color is actually solid glass stringers that are about the size and length of a piece of spaghetti. They come in many colors and can be either transparent or opaque. I use a glass cutter to hand score the stringers to the desired lengths. Then they're broken, so I end up with several tiny segments. I use a scribe to score the design into the base of the bezel. This provides a guide for where to add the colored glass. The basic difference between micro and mini mosaics is how the glass is laid into the bezel and how each technique is finished. When creating micro mosaics, I set the glass pieces in vertically so they stand up on end. Each segment of glass is dipped into the epoxy glue and then set into the bezel. They go in slowly, one piece at a time, and are placed very close together. Once the bezel has been completely filled, the finishing process includes grinding down the glass and polishing it on a lapidary wheel. As you can see, no heat is used to melt or fuse the glass. The result is a solid, polished surface of glass. When you catch it in the light, you can see each individual piece of glass. When creating mini mosaics, the glass segments are set in horizontally and laid end to end. Each piece of glass is dipped into the epoxy and then set into the bezel on its side. But in this process, there is a little bit of space left between the pieces. When the bezel is filled, and the finishing process includes applying a colored grout and then sealing it for protection. Each finely handcrafted piece that I create is a one-of-a-kind treasure. My designs appeal to those who enjoy jewelry that's unique, colorful, and can be worn for special occasions or every day. For more information, please visit burkhartdesignstudio.com.
Hi, Julie. It's so good to finally meet you.
I know, MJ. I'm just so excited about this. I've been wanting to meet you for a long time, so I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Me too. Me too. Now, remind me how we met. We've been Facebook buddies for a while. So, can you refresh my memory? Was it through the WJA, the Women's Jewelry
Yes,
Association?
so Women's Jewelry Association, and I remember seeing your quilts at a fundraiser for WJA, and I was just like, whoa, those are amazing. And somehow we started talking. I think you had approached me about collaborating on some pieces, but I'm not sure who approached who first, but But it was because of WJA
Right.
that we did meet. Yes.
Right. I remember just when starting to roll out this adventure, I asked Bernadette of the main, the national
Yeah, she was
president.
executive director at the time.
I said, hey, I make these quilts that look like faceted gemstones. Are you interested? And she was like, well, yeah. I mean, you can't be shy when you're bringing your art into the world, right? And it was scary. I mean, taking quilts to Manhattan, to the Chelsea Piers, I was just wondering how they'd be received. So people were very kind and very, very nice. And it was fun. It was fun. Actually, some people came up to me and said, oh, I love your paintings. And I'm like, no, no, it's not a quilt. I said, yeah, you can touch it. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. I'm so glad
You
we got
are amazing. Look at it behind you. It's just so beautiful.
this
Yeah,
is
and
one
you
of my
get to capture all the facets and
thank
mhm.
thank you. This is one of my patterns. So and then this one is a new design I'm doing. I'm working on the Smithsonian series. I'm going to be doing some quilts inspired by the National Gem Collection, and so this is a piece from Victoria
Oh,
Transvaal. So that's kind of fun. So
oh, wonderful,
just
wonderful.
not enough time. So yeah, I'm curious. How did quilts find their way into your designs? How do quilt patterns find their way into your designs?
Well, I mean, look at them. They're very mosaic-like,
Mhm,
quilts are.
mhm.
And I remember seeing the G's Bin quilts, and they just blew my socks off. There's just something about the G's Bin quilts that spoke to my heart. And I always have loved self-taught artists, intuitive artists. And they're kind of the epitome of a self-taught artist. They just used the scraps that they had, the clothing they had. They had nothing, and then they made this beautiful artwork.
Yes.
And I love that it's not like real hard line. Everything's kind of wonky and wobbly, and just that just spoke to my heart so much. So um, that's what it just looks like a mosaic to me.
Yeah.
So I thought, this design would be interesting in a mosaic style. So I did like the wonky edge and kind of followed their patterns and got me started on that. And it just kind of lent itself really well to my mosaics.
Really
I
beautiful.
mean,
And
I
I
don't just do the, Mhm.
no, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I really, it just really spoke to me, the intuitive aspect. And they just put so much of themselves into these quilts.
Yes, yes.
And I can't sew, so this is my way of making a quilt. My family, they all sew, but I sew through my finger. And I can't, it's too soft. I like the hard edge, the metal. I have to work with something stiff and hard. And I'd
Uh-huh.
love to be able to quilt, but I can't. So I make little metal and glass quilts.
I love it. I love it. Well, that was going to be my next question is, are you a quilt maker? And so now you've answered my question is that we call ourselves piecers, right? So you piece with glass,
Mhm,
you piece with fabric.
mhm.
And you were talking about the G's Bend, and I totally understand what you mean. Just the real, the very organic shapes that they use. And it is such a graphically gorgeous design aesthetic that they have. And now I'm seeing your gems and your pendants, and yes, you have that same wave and that same organic shape that you put into your work.
It's a
Well,
way to honor them, these women, these amazing women. For me, it's like a way to honor them. And yeah, they were quite an inspiration for me. And I did try to make a quilt, and I attempted it recently, and well, a few years back, and I had lost a great deal of weight. And so I took my big clothes and thought, well, I'm going to make myself a quilt. And I thought, well, I can't sew a straight line, so I'll make it kind of wonky like the G's Bin quilts.
yeah.
Well, I discovered that that's a little more difficult than sewing a straight line to do a wonky. So I do have the quilt top, and I don't know what to do with it. Maybe where I can send it to have it be
Oh,
finished. And
Absolutely. Well, there's people out there who have long arm businesses all the time, and they would
Oh,
be happy to have you as a
yeah.
client, I'm sure. Anybody in the Tiny Treasures Club want to get in touch with Julie, and you're saying, hey, I'd love to quilt your top? Yeah, you'll have your contact information as well. Man, we can get you plugged in.
Oh, that'd be great.
So that's fabulous. So tell me about the other, you'd make other designs besides the beautiful quilt pendants. Tell me more about the other designs that you get to work
Well,
on.
I consider my mosaic work my art jewelry, but I have a studio in Northeast Minneapolis and I do custom work. So I have clients that come in and we design and make custom pieces for them. And I've been a professional jeweler about 40 years now, so I've been around a while. And and I also do diamond setting for people in the industry. So there's some stores and some personal jewelers in Minneapolis that I do diamond setting and custom for.
Yeah.
So that's kept me pretty busy, and I don't have as much time for my mosaic work as I would like. So hopefully I'll transition more into that, as I scale down my trade work and more into my art jewelry. So I'm looking forward to that.
How did you get
But the trade
into,
work,
yeah, yeah. How did you get into the jewelry business, 40 years ago? What drew you? Did you have family members who were in the trade, or tell me more?
no, an art class. So in art class one time, the teacher taught us how to carve a wax. So I carved a wax and we had a cast, and I was like hooked. And this was middle school. So the teacher knew I really loved it, and she hooked me up with this other artist. This was in Fort Worth, Texas. So she hooked me up with this woman in Fort Worth, and the woman helped me make another piece of jewelry, and I just fell in love with it. And so I kind of dabbled in it for a while and moved to California for a while, and then I came back and went to school. It was a trade school in Paris, Texas, and it was just all hands on. It was a year long. It was just hands on at the bench, and we worked with brass and glass. So I learned the basics. And then after that, went to Dallas at a diamond importer and learned to set stones, and then Chicago. So through the years, just working in retail, and I really love custom work, and that's kind of what drew me to the mosaics. I had seen these Italian mosaics, and this was years ago. This was probably 25 years ago. And I couldn't find any information on how it was done. Nothing about the process. I couldn't find anything. So I just started experimenting and kind of developed my own method and went with that. And now there's more information out there. But I never learned the traditional way of doing it, the traditional methods. And I found in Italy a class that taught that. So that was probably like 5 years ago. So I went and learned the traditional method, which was really interesting, very different than what I was doing. So I incorporate that in it as well. So yeah, so that's been my journey, and it's
I
not over yet.
It's not over yet. No, no. I mean, I love the fact that we reinvent ourselves over and over again. And I tell folks, I talk a lot in my trunk shows about the wonderful book, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. David Bales and Ted Orland wrote a book called Art and Fear, the perils and rewards of making art. And the gist of it is that, your art is waiting to be made. Only you can make it. So get to it and make lots of it, right? Even if it's bad art, just keep making, because one piece informs the next, informs the next. The other thing they talk about is vision always exceeds execution. And so your story is so similar to so many of, and mine especially, in that you saw something, you're like, that's cool. I want to do that. The G's Bend, bringing that together, but then the mosaics together. And you had this vision, wasn't sure how to do it. Your vision exceeded execution. And that's where innovation comes from. I truly believe. And then you just decided to dive in and just say, I'm going to figure this out. And you did. You did.
Well, it circles back into that intuitive art that I love so much, and then just teaching ourselves how to do something and going with it, whether it makes sense or not. You don't have those boundaries, like, you only can do it this way.
Right.
I'll do it a different way. And as a matter of fact, I went to a quilt shop when I was making my little funky quilt.
Mhm.
And I told her what I was doing, making it out of old clothes. And she's like, you can't do that. It's like, what do you mean I can't do that? And she's like, you have to start with new fabric. And it's like, well, tell that to my grandma and millions of quilt makers. I couldn't believe that. It's like, well, yes, you can.
Yes,
So
you
I
can.
didn't go back there.
That whole, like the
Yes, you
song is,
can.
yeah, roses are red, the sky is blue, and the only, flowers are red. They can only be red, and the leaves are green. They can only be green. And as we teach our kids how to draw, it's like, you can make them any color you want. You can put them upside down. It's all good. So, oh,
Exactly.
that's wonderful. I love your approach to things. Your explorer approach. As you're talking about the intuitive piecing and the intuitive work and kind of that organic shape, I have a proposal for you. I have a challenge for you. There are so many wonderful people out there now who are teaching these classes on improv quilting, and it's basically just cutting up pieces, putting them together, and creating these fabulous, graphic, beautiful designs. And I think that's
Mhm.
kind of what we're talking about. But there's a ton of books out there and a ton of classes about improv quilting. It's so different than what I do. I want to take one of those classes because it's so different than what I do, in that obviously it's very premeditated and planned out. I know exactly they only fit together one way. So the improvisation for me
Don't
comes
you
in.
find if you're trained like that to have everything precise, isn't it sometimes difficult just to loosen up and do something goofy?
It
I
is.
find it really hard to do that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I need that balance. And in my
Yeah.
work, I paint my fabric, and that's where I basically just, I call it all going all Helen Frankenthaler on it. Just big color waves and color patches and things like that. So that's fun for me. Yeah, and so talk about your process. We saw the video about the process, and just is yours, how do you strike the balance between improv and intuitive and then planfulness in your work?
Well, I think a lot of, like with the quilts, I'll make the bezel and then kind of draw out basically what I'm going to be doing, and then the material kind of leads me.
Okay.
I'll the material not being your kind of material. My material's the glass, so I'll start placing the glass and it kind of leads me. And I might change something if it doesn't fit right or if it doesn't look right to my eye. I'll change it. But again, it's that intuitive aspect of it. So, and in my jewelry work, when I carve a wax, sometimes I'll take a gemstone and start with that as the center. And then I let it speak to me, so I'll start carving with a basic idea in mind. And sometimes it takes me down a different road. So, just listening to that intuitive voice
Right. And
to
to do that,
lead.
you have to be
I
open
answer the
to it. Yeah, you have
question.
to be open to it, right? You just, and you
Open
have
to
to
it,
let it
yes.
speak to you. And it can be scary sometimes. You're like, I'm not getting this. How come it's not speaking to me? And you just have to be kind of fearless about that and just
Mhm,
let it come.
mhm.
Very cool.
Listen to your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I ask you, I get this question all the time. How long did it take how long did it take to make this, right? Or, my large
Oh
art
my
piece,
God.
how long does it get? And truly the real answer is all my life, right? Because we're constantly,
Right. 40 years and
yeah, yeah.
50 hours.
So, for example, the piece you're working on now, can you tell me a little bit about how the piece you're wearing now, how long did it take
Yeah.
you to do something like that? Oh, that's so cool.
MJ, I have tried to sit down and time everything,
You
but
know,
it doesn't work that way because I work with I juggle several pieces at a time,
got it?
and I have tried to really track it. and I really can't. I mean, it's not like one day, it's like several days over a period of several days, because just building, because I build the silver
Yes.
bezel first, and then I cut the glass.
Yes.
Sometimes I draw the glass out, I make my own stringers. These were all pre-made stringers, but then that takes time too.
Sure.
So, and you make more than you need, and then you cut them and place them and design, so it's like, I don't have an answer for that. I really don't know. I
And I
don't.
appreciate that honesty, because sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't tell.
Right. Yeah. How
Like,
many hours did you put in your quilt?
yeah.
Can you really say
I can just tell
a
people
life?
order of magnitude, right? It's not, it does, I can't make a quilt, that can't make that in a day, but it's not
Mhm.
going to take me 6 months, it might take me a month, it might take me 2 months, I'm working part-time on it. So I get it. I guess that was kind of an unfair question. I kind of, sorry
But
about
I
that.
get asked that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it must take patience.
Well, if it's your joy, you talk about when you were taking your class in middle school, and you just, whew, your heart just resonated with it. It's like when I took my first quilt class, I'm like, or my, yeah, with my mom and her friend taught us how to quilt 30 plus years ago, and I was just like, this is my jam now. I'm doing this. This is my passion. And you just know. And so it doesn't really take a lot of patience. Well, I have to be honest with you. Sometimes I do get very impatient with myself, so I do have to have a lot of patience, mostly with me, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So,
almost meditative, isn't it?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole
Mm-hmm.
process, from the design process to the quilting process to, yeah, I love everything about it. And I know you do too. So the one thing though that I struggle with is taking care of this while I'm sewing. I've often gone to the point where, do I need to set a timer so I can stretch and all of that? Your work with those little tweezers and those little teeny tiny, how do you take care of, your posture and your body and not get so, you know?
Well, I before pre-COVID, I had a lot of massages and chiropractic appointments, but I haven't been doing that. But trying to remember to sit up straight and do some stretches, and I think our bodies are our tools. Our hands and our eyes are important tools in all of our work. And it's like you really need to take care of those things. So I don't take care of my back as well as I should, but sit up straight. Try to remember to sit up straight
Right, right.
and roll just a few stretches. Sometimes I just get up and stretch, and I think you just need to maybe put a timer on to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
So,
How has
mm.
COVID, you talked about, that's one way that COVID and the pandemic and the shutdown has changed your work, or changed your process. What are some of the other ways that you're finding that things are different now than they were a year ago?
Well, the studio building I'm in, we would be open to the public. We had a huge art open studio event every year, and that was shut down. I mean, we'd get like 10,000 people through
Wow.
that art whirl is what it's called. But the retail aspect of my studio is totally shut down, but I still have my private clients. So, and one client is a retail store, but the engagement rings, wedding bands, that's gone through the roof. So the jewelry industry is actually thriving right now, believe it or not. So that's kept me busy. And I had it like one quarter last year wasn't so good, the second quarter of the year, but the rest of the year was actually okay.
That's
So,
wonderful.
yeah, so I think it's just the retail aspect, seeing the public, which I love. I love meeting people, and I miss that part of it, but I do still have my private clients. So,
Just so many parallels, Julie. Our everything's shut down. I was a traveling teacher. I miss the interaction with people. I get energy from people, but now I'm doing. You pivot and you do Zoom, and then you create like the Tiny Treasures Club to bring people together, um, and just like the jewelry and the engagement industry, the
Mhm.
quilting industry is going nuts. I mean, people were making masks. They wanted to make masks, so they bought machines, sewing machines to make masks. And now they've got this machine, and they're like, okay, now what do I do with it? And so,
Ah,
people are doing the entry level stuff, and then moving on, moving on, moving on. I mean, we have this little industry that it's exploding. Literally, they could not
yeah.
keep. I'm a Bernina ambassador. They could not keep Burnett's in stock, and still they have a hard time keeping the lower end, kind of the intro machine in
Mhm.
stock. And places like Walmart and Target or wherever they sell sewing machines and sewing machine couldn't keep them in stock. So
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's like we're nesting, and it's the entertainment industry really suffered,
yeah,
restaurants and hospitality, all of those industries really suffered. But I think um, any industry like more about the home
hmm
has really gone through the roof. So
yeah.
maybe there's a blessing in that in a
I think
way.
so. I hope so, and I think
Yeah.
it's going to be around for a while. People are finding their joy as well in quilting and in jewelry and making jewelry.
Comforting, aren't they? I always think of quilts as being comforting
Yes.
and
Yeah.
warm.
Yeah. Yeah. I started making my quilts because I always knew that I wanted to put them up on the wall as art. I wanted that soft uh, fiber, but the color, but yet I
Mhm.
love them because they are soft and they have that cozy feel. Even though they're on the wall, and I have them on my bed too, but most of my diamonds live on the wall. So anyway, well, Julie,
Okay.
it has been fabulous talking with you. And you're in Milwaukee, right?
No, actually, I live in Hudson, Wisconsin, which is
Okay.
just outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul. So I'm just over the border.
Okay.
My
Yeah.
studio's in Minneapolis, but I live in Wisconsin, so it's like a border town to.
Sorry, I just outed myself on how bad my geography was. I just talked to our mutual friend Lori Watt, who is from Milwaukee,
Yeah,
Wisconsin, and you're from Minneapolis. Okay, got it, got it. So
yeah.
yeah, you know,
Hudson, Wisconsin. So I'm like Wisconsin. I feel more Minnesotan because all our news comes from Minnesota. So
well, I tell you what, let's not wait so long to have another conversation. I'd love to work on. We got to figure out a way to collaborate. I
yeah,
don't know.
let's talk about that. I would love that.
All right.
So
All right. Well, meanwhile, stay warm, stay well. I hope you're working on something wonderful. You got something fun on the bench right now that you're working on?
yes, I have a dear friend that's getting married. So they gave me all their old diamonds and I'm making a piece for them now. So
Lovely.
they'll be engaged soon. So I'm so excited about that. Yeah.
Bringing people joy.
They're doing 18 karat yellow, which I love. I love yellow gold and it's
Oh,
18 carats, a big bulky piece. So
gorgeous.
I'll show a picture on social media when it's done.
Please
So
do. Please do. And I'll just share
yeah.
that with our club members. So that's great. All right, my dear.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Thank you for inviting me. It was quite a pleasure and really an honor to do so.
Oh,
Thank you.
take care. All right. Bye bye.
Bye.